welcome to my tutorial on how to easily paint a miniature. Without further ado, let's get started. At the beginning, we need to paint this beautiful miniature with black primer, just like this. I'm painting the miniature with this airbrush that I used in the previous episode of my tank build. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend checking it out. Just head over to my channel and take a look. Here's the miniature after painting, and now we move on to the most important part of easily painting this figure, because without it, we'd really struggle, and we want to paint the miniature easily, quickly, and efficiently. I take white paint and spray the miniature from above so that I paint the areas where the light hits the figure and create natural shadows. This is how the miniature looks after painting. You can see that beautiful shading has been created, and from above, when I place the miniature on this stand, you can see how the top is richly painted with that white color. So now we move on to painting almost the entire miniature, because we're going to paint it with a dark blue color, which I'll mix by combining black paint with a regular blue paint. And the most important thing when painting such a miniature that's been primed with white is to thin the paint well with water so that it has a very fluid consistency, much like if we were using an airbrush, except we're doing it with a brush. I'm painting the entire figure and not worrying about going over the gloves or the boots because it doesn't matter right now. We'll apply the other colors later, and for now, I just want to cover everything thoroughly. We'll do this twice because one coat won't be enough. Next, I'll be mixing the paint into progressively lighter shades because now we'll focus on the highlights and brightening up the figure, making it really pop and ensuring it's not just a dull single color. Of course, what we've already done with the airbrush provides those shadows, but we want to make them even more pronounced and vivid. We do this several times to build up the colors, and in those brightest areas, we simply apply less paint, especially in those really well-lit spots. The next thing we'll do on the figure is painting the entire piece with that dark wash. I kindly ask you to subscribe because it really helps our channel grow. If you haven't done so yet, just click that button. And of course, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I apply the wash only in areas that, for example, are near the strap, in very dark recesses, or under the collar, and in those kinds of dark shadows. This is how the figure looks after the wash. It really gave it a lot of character, and it made the effect truly noticeable to the eye. To make the effect even more noticeable, I take the lightest blue paint that I managed to mix, and I apply it right next to that wash to create that exact effect. This is how the figure looks after painting, and you could say that half of the work is done. Now we move on to creating the leather straps and that material used for his hat and the goggles. I'm using these paints right here, and the one in the middle is our base color. The ones on the right will be used to highlight our straps, and those on the left are the paints we'll use to create a wash, giving our straps an even better appearance. I will now paint the straps and the goggles with that color that was in the middle of the palette and indicated by the arrow. Later on, I'll move on to the lighter colors and do the highlights in a similar way to how we did with the blue. But instead, I'll create various dots and lines that produce the effect of genuine, worn leather, as if it were torn or distressed in some way. We've already achieved a really nice effect, but it's a bit too bright. Therefore, to make this effect darker and more subdued, I'm using these paints that I'm showing, and I'll dilute them heavily with water, almost to the point where they're just like water and not really paint. Unfortunately, I didn't record the part where I paint with those darker colors. To paint the rest of the leather parts, for example, the gloves that I didn't paint with those colors, I'll use this paint to make the gloves more gray and to separate the colors from those lighter straps, as well as from the figure's hat. I'll paint everything in the same way that I painted the rest of the items. Paint the rest in the same way as that, meaning I move from lighter paints to even lighter ones, and in the end I apply a diluted wash. Fortunately, I do have a recording of me painting one of the gloves. paint this figure's boots black and the soles of the boots in a dark gray. Now we'll paint the figure's face. Overall, it's not much different from painting the previous parts. So we start by applying base color, which you can see mixed on the palette, and then we add progressively lighter shades onto the face to give it that really cool effect. And now the game changer is adding a wash to the face, which has a slight sheen to it. If you'd like, I can write in the comments exactly what this particular wash is called, and we need to apply it all over the figure's face. What's next for us is painting the eyes. Well, it turned out as it did. Sometimes it's worth tweaking things, and now you'll see the final result. So I also added a few silver details to the straps, painted the goggles black and gave them a bit of shine, and around the collar, I painted a piece of the uniform green. Here's the final figurine. Let me know if you liked it. And of course, I encourage you to subscribe, like the video, check out my previous videos, and that's it for now. See you soon. Bye.